Hello and welcome to another NICEIC Online Certification System demo and Q&A. I'm very pleased to be joined tonight by my colleague from the NOCS team, Lewis Barnard. How are you this evening, Lewis?
I'm good, thank you, Sam. Thanks for asking.
That's great. Just a little bit of housekeeping. So the Q&A chat is open already, and it's great that people have already started to put their questions in. Please do post your questions into the chat, and there will be time at the end where we'll get round to answering some of the most frequently asked questions. We do have a team of people, Carey, Juliet and Rumit in the background answering the questions as well. So hopefully you'll get an immediate answer. And as I say, we will pick up the common ones and the most frequently asked ones to cover off at the end. So we'll be running through a demonstration of the key features of the new online certification software. And then we will put some time at the end to answer a Q&A and perhaps do some specific demos of things that people want to be able to do but just aren't sure about. You will be able to re-watch this on demand as many times as you like using the same link as you've used to join tonight. And also, if you go to our YouTube channel, that's the NICIC YouTube channel, you'll see a previous version, which will hopefully be much the same demo, but might be some different Q&As, so might help you a little bit further. So please do, as I say, put your questions into the chat. I'm going to hand you over now to Lewis to run through a demonstration of the key features of the new system, and then we'll join you later for an online Q&A. Over to you, Lewis.
Thanks very much, Sam. I'm just going to share my screen, so hopefully that comes through. Yeah, there we go, perfect. So that's coming up. And so what we're looking at here initially, so this is the dashboard when you first log into the new online certification system. So most of you have moved across, you'll be familiar to seeing this already. And the approach we've gone with here is to have a fresh, modernized look and feel. So with the old system, it did have a lot of tiles on there. The color scheme was a bit dated. So we've revamped this and hopefully added some new features in terms of shortcuts and just made it clearer to use. So what we've got here, if I start from the top, is we have our form shortcut, and within there we have got some additional menus, as you can see here. So the main one we've got at first is the recent forms. So this will show us our 5 most recent jobs that we've created or edited on the system. From here we can get some information about the client name, the installation address, whether it's locked or not, or whether the forms were waiting for QS review. And we can then open that form, if it is a draft, either by clicking on the name of the form itself or clicking on the pencil icon on the right-hand side of the form. Moving along, we then have favourite forms, and the idea we have here is, let's say you have a project that's ongoing, whether it's a school, a hospital, or maybe just a large installation that's taking a few days to go through. What you could do is to make it easier to find rather than having to go into your form listing, carry out a search perhaps if you've got a lot of forms on the go. You can mark forms as a favourite, and from the dashboard you can then filter your forms to see just your favourites or your 5 most recent favourites on there. And again, you can click on the pencil to open it up if it's ongoing, and you can click on the form name as well to view the form, let's say if it's draft or locked. Moving then across, we have templates, and same concept with favorites. I'll mention this as we go through the demo, is it's a global approach we've used for favorites, which you can then choose, where that suits for yourself to use. There's some areas it may not be as useful, but then others you may want to. So for templates, we can do the exact same thing. We can set up a template here, and then we can see that as our favorite. And what we have done with the new system, we've changed how we show templates. So instead of form templates showing up in your listing with the rest of your forms, they're now separated. So your forms are in one area, form templates are in another, and I can cover that later on, but we've separated it so it's easier to find and manage those templates. And you can also see your 5 most recent templates there. And again, we've got favorite templates, so that same concept repeats. Moving on over to notifications, we have got some menus here. So again, your 5 most recent notifications, you can see the address that was notified, the status of it, whether it's submitted. As you can see, I've got one that's rejected or if it's pending submission. And you can also see the notification IDs at a glance. So if you need to take down the notification number, you can. We then have a whole separate column for rejected notifications, and as you can see, I've got one there that's been rejected, so I've notified that to the local authority. For whatever reason, that's been rejected by the local authority. It's come back to myself. I can then go through, make a correction as needed, and resubmit that to building control. Again, favourites is a concept that repeats. I haven't got any favourites for notifications, but you could do the same. Let's say you had a notification you started, didn't quite get to finish for any reason, or you've got a couple on the go that you wanted to come back to at a later date. You can mark it as a favourite just so it's easier to find. Moving across, we then have saved searches, and with the system, we've enhanced the search capabilities that we offer. So previously, the only searches really you could carry out were on the form listings, so you could apply the sort of filters to stack those and find things. We've gone with an approach now where you can actually search. Most pages will have sort of a simple search, and then a lot of them will then have an advanced search. And what you can then do is save that advanced search to your library. You can then come to your recent saved searches here, or there is a saved searches tab as well in the menu. You can see the ones that you've got saved across the system, press the magnifying glass, and that will take you to the relevant section and apply those filters. And you can then edit those as well later on. You can overwrite them, and I'll touch on that when we go to the forms listing. And then a new concept, if we move across, is the alerts and downloads section. We'll cover the alerts first. So what we have and what we've introduced is alerts relating to the system notifications. So on the previous system, there weren't any alerts. Let's say if you were a QS and your engineers marked a form ready for review, you wouldn't receive an alert. There's nothing to tell you that. What we've introduced is now you can get an alert to say, you know, this form's been marked ready for review. You can then click on the view icon, open that form up, and you can countersign it. As you see there, a lot of my recent alerts are reminders for forms, which is another thing that we've added, where let's say you're doing an EICR, it's due to be retested in 3 years, 5 years. At the end of the form, you could put a reminder date for 3 years' time or 5 years' time, and then you'll get an alert closer to the time that it's coming up for renewal, and then you could reach out to the client and arrange access. You don't go back, carry out testing. Along with the alerts and the recent ones, we do also have, if I click on at the top, the alerts banner. You can see I've got 20 plus alerts at the moment on the system, and there will be a range of different alerts there. Most of mine are, again, reminders, but we've also got, a certificate's ready for QS review. A download that I've requested is ready to download, so I can click on download there and pull it off. Also, different test instruments are maybe due for calibration. So I can, again, get an alert to know, right, okay, I need to go and send that off for calibration or recalibrate that. And yeah, you can see there we've got a long list of different reminders. Moving then to the download section, what we've gone with on the new system, the approach we've taken is instead of on a system, let's say you're on your form listing, you want to download a form, you click download. That should download relatively quickly. In some cases, especially if you're doing very large certificates, let's say 200 pages, 300 pages, what would happen is the system would actually sit there and it would not allow you to navigate away or do anything else until that downloads process. So effectively, you'd be stuck there until it's downloaded. What we've done here is we've actually separated downloads out, so you could press download for, let's say, 3 or 4 forms, carry on using the system. It won't sit there waiting. You can go off, do what you need to do if that's another form, or notify building control. When that download's ready, like you saw there, you'll just get an alert, like the one I've got there saying, PDF is ready to download. You can press download and then that'll be available for you. The benefit here as well is, let's say you downloaded a form, you didn't save it or you deleted it by mistake, instead of having to go back into the system, try and find what you downloaded again and re-download it, and potentially wait a couple of minutes while it is then trying to download a large form, you can now just go back into your downloads, press download again, and it will just recover that. You don't have to actually try and find it and hit download and wait again. Now, if we move down to the bottom of the page, what you can see here is the new navigation approach that we've taken. And what we've done is we've made it simpler. We've added more navigation options, but we've expanded them out. So rather than having to go into a menu and then a sub-menu to find something, it's all easily and clearly laid out here. So there's no, it takes out the guesswork of, where would a section be or how do I get to another area? And as you can see there, test instruments, rather than on the old system, you have to go to account, then equipment, and then find your test instruments. You can just go under company information and there's test instruments there. Same with addresses or logos, it's all easily accessible. So that's the approach we've gone with. And we've also got that same navigation at the top right hand side of the page. When you click on menu, you can then move around the system that way, so you don't have to keep going back to the dashboard to do that. One area I will touch on is the test instruments. So if we go to company information and test instruments, you can see I've got 2 bits of equipment there at the moment saved on my system. I can at a glance see, the name, the make, the model, next calibration date, serial number, and whether it's active or not. If I, let's say, needed to make an amendment to that, I've recalibrated it. It's been recalibrated, it's due to be retested in a couple of years' time. I can click on the pencil icon, pull up the test instrument in question, and then I can make edits as needed. So you can see there, next calibration. I could change that date to the 9th of October and save. And then that calibration date's changed. And again, I'll receive reminders when I change that calibration date when it's due to come back up for retest. To add a new piece of equipment, it's simply a case of clicking on Create New. You can then enter the details for the test instrument, press save, and then that will be there available for you when you're filling in a form. And like I said before, with the advanced search and the search, you can carry out a search here. So if I put in Smith, that will narrow down my results. So if you had a lot of test instruments, you could filter that way. And there is an advanced search as well. So if I click on the funnel icon, there's more options here that I can filter by to try and find a particular piece of equipment. Then moving on to the forms listing, that'll be, moving on to the user listings, that'll be an area we'll cover. So if I pull up my list of users, you can see I've got 3 people there, including myself. So at a glance, again, I can see who they are, their email, whether they're active, what role they hold within the company, and we'll cover the roles in a moment. And then I can also see at a glance, are they the principal duty holder? Are they the qualified supervisor? So if I wanted to, let's say, give my colleague an additional role or a permission, what I can do is simply click on the pencil icon against their name. I'll be able to see their details. I can see what level role they have. And what we've done here, we've introduced 3 levels of access, or 3 roles, you could say. So the engineer is a standard sort of default role most people will be. From there, you can manually be given additional permissions as needed or taken off, so you can fine-tune that for colleagues. We then have an administrator, and if I bump this user up to an administrator level, you can see all of the permissions that they have are then set to yes or manage. It will be the top level access for them. We then have another role, which is external user, and the idea behind this is, let's say on an electrical installation certificate, you have a third party involved with the design or the construction. Rather than having to get them to sign on screen on your account, what you can do is select third party, put their details in. That would create them as an external user. They would then get an invite like you would have received when you joined the system. They can activate their account, and when they go in, it's a very stripped back level of access. So if I scroll down, you'll see there pretty much everything is going to be set to sort of no. So they won't be able to do very much. They can't see anything apart from the forms that they've been assigned to. So when they go to their listing, they'll see any forms you've picked them against. They can then open that form, review the information, countersign, and then you can review that afterwards, let's say as a QS or someone that's then filling in that form further. And I'll come out here and abandon changes. And to create a new user, it's simply a case, again, of just clicking Create New. You can then fill in the details. You can set the permissions as needed. The only permissions you can't set yourself are the principal duty holder, qualified supervisor, approved certified construction certification coordinator. Those roles are something that we would need to do on the support team. So if you do find that you need one of those roles or you haven't got that at the moment, get in touch, give us a call, or you can raise a support request on the system. We can then pick that up. We'll be able to have a look at the account and get that updated for you accordingly. And I'll close that again. One other thing you can do, and most fields in the listings will allow you to do this, you can expand a field. So if I expand the user details, I can see at a glance some information about that user. So I don't need to necessarily open it to see everything. But if I did want to sort of delve deeper into it, I can do so by clicking on the pencil. Moving on to forms and listings for the forms. If I pull up our form listing, you can see here again, it's similar to the previous system in terms of, you have a list of all of the forms that you've created. The default sort is in date order, so newest to oldest. You can change that though by clicking on the sort up here, and you can see we've got a range of different options available. Alternatively, what you can do, if you did want to, let's say, narrow down your results or search for things, you can either do a quick search here. So for example, if I put in hospital, that will then narrow my results down and show just the form that I'm looking for that matches. Alternatively, I can click on the advanced search by clicking on the funnel, and then from here I can set, let's say, ready for QS, status draft, view results, and then that will come up with the forms that match that criteria. And you can stack these filters. So let's say you wanted, ready for QS, draft, created in the last 30 days. You could add more or add less as needed to narrow that down. And then, like I mentioned before about saving searches, you can do that from within the advanced search field. So once you've configured your search criteria that you want, at the bottom you can click on Save to Library, and then you'll see we've got two options there. We've got Save as New or Overwrite an Existing. So we can either save a brand new one, or let's say you had a previous search that you used to use, criteria has changed slightly, or you want to change the date window that you're looking between, you can overwrite an existing one once you've made those changes. And then to reload it, you can either go to your save searches, or alternatively, when you're in the relevant section for an advanced search, you can access your save search library. And you can see there I've got a couple of save searches already here, so you could retrieve it that way as well. Coming out of the advanced search, and I'm just going to clear my filters. You can also get a few other options on here. So if I expand a form here, this EIC, again, at a glance, I can see some more information about that form, so I'm not having to necessarily go into it to see more information. I can see here, the installation address, the client details. If this was a condition report, I could see the observation count, how many C1, C2s I had, the outcome. So that information is available. And on the right-hand side, we still have the same options you had before. So you've still got edit. You can still download the form itself, download a circuit label if you wanted to print that out with the distribution board. And then you do have your duplicate and convert options like before. So only some forms will offer the convert option. So if you see that option there, it's available. It's generally EICs and EICRs you can convert between, and we do have duplicate available on any form. So if you needed to make a copy for any reason, rather than rewriting it, you can duplicate it, and you wouldn't need to necessarily create a template to achieve the same result. I'll close this field there, and then what we've also got, we've added a few new things to our listing. So ready for QS will be one that you might notice. So at a glance now you can see if a form's ready for QS. You're not having to apply a search to see that. And another option we've added is, again, the favorite star concept. And how that works here is, as you can see, my form listing is showing all. If I wanted to separate those forms out into my favorites, simply click on favorites, and that will refine my results to just the forms that I've marked with a star. So then I can narrow that down quickly, find what I was looking for, go in and then work on it. Another change we have made is the offline, or the ability to work offline on the system. So rather than having a separate application on an iPad or an Android tablet, the system itself is designed to work offline. So as you can see there, we've got a cloud icon on the right-hand side of each of these forms, and that cloud with a different color means something. So you can see most of my recent forms there have a green tick in the cloud, or a green cloud with a tick. That means the form's ready and available for offline use. So if my connection was to drop out now, let's say, I'll be able to continue working on that form. I can still edit it, make changes, upload photos with no internet connection. So that's absolutely fine. Then the next cloud icon we've got there is a white cloud with a line through it. That means that that form isn't available offline. So if my connection was to drop, that form would simply disappear until I've reconnected to the internet and reloaded the page. There are two other clouds, which unfortunately my test account here doesn't have. They're both orange clouds, one with a downwards facing arrow and one with an upwards facing arrow. The one with a downwards facing arrow means that you have a version of the certificate saved onto your device locally. However, it's not the latest version, so it's not available offline currently. To make it available, you just need to open the form. That will then save the latest version. You can then take that offline. And then the other cloud we have with the upwards facing arrow, that means that you've worked on this form offline and the changes you've made haven't been synchronized yet to the system. So in that case, all you need to do is make sure you're still logged into the system, still have the same tab open. When you've got an internet connection, open the form, and again, that data will then synchronize back up to the web. That will save on the system, and then that will be stored there. So you can then take it offline again if you need to, or you'll be able to continue editing it whilst you're online. What I'm now going to do is just open up a new form, and we'll just run through some of the changes we've made within the system. So if I click on Create New, we can create new form. And here you'll see a list of all of the available certificates to myself. This will vary depending on what schemes you have with us, but you have a long list of anything that you can create on here. And what we have carried over, like I said, favorites is a global approach. So what you can do is favorite forms like I have done here, and then I can narrow down my list of available forms to those favorites. So I know on the support team, and I've even done it myself, I've accidentally created a green, let's say, installation certificate or condition report. I meant to create a red one, and then I had to template the information across or copy and duplicate things over. Now this should hopefully narrow that down, so you could mark your favorite forms that you're commonly using as a favorite, click on favorites when you're creating a new, and then the list you see will only be those forms that you've selected. What I'm going to do is just open up an EIC. That's then going to load up, and what we've got here, this is the form itself that we're filling in. So unlike the previous system where we had certificate mode and data entry mode and you'd switch between the two, the approach we've gone with here is it's a hybrid between the two. So it's a mixture, I would say. So what you're seeing on the screen is the PDF. So you don't need to preview the PDF to see, does it look correct? Did it come out right? Does everything line up correctly? What you're seeing here is it. And to edit, you simply just click on the section you want to amend. So you click on that section, this menu will then come out of the side, similar to a data entry mode approach. You can then fill in the details. In this case, I'll select an address from my library. We can copy that across. And then what I can then do is either press next, that will then jump to part 2, and then I can next again, it will part 3 and so forth, and I can navigate through the whole form that way. Or if I click save at the top, that will save. I can then close this menu, and as you can see there, the installation details and the details of the client have re-rendered onto the PDF, and that will appear in real time, so you can see the edits you're making as you go through. In terms of the actual form and the content we asked for, it's exactly the same. There hasn't been any changes to the form, so filling it in or entering the details as that you need to enter should be the same experience. There's nothing new, no new fields. What we have made, though, is some changes to make things quicker to fill in and also add continuation sheets a lot easier. So if I jump to part 2 and I enter some text in here, as you can see, I've got a character count at the bottom, and it will say currently 252 of 450 characters before a continuation sheet is created. So what will happen, I'll keep adding information, I'll go past that point, and then it will say continuation sheet added. When I then press save, the PDF is going to save, it will re-render that information there, and instead of on the previous system where you'd run out of space and simply be unable to type anymore and have to press the plus button to manually add a continuation sheet, the system's automatically going to do that for you. So you can see there, I've added a continuation sheet, that information's already gone over to the new page, and I can just keep adding more and more text as needed. Going forward, we are looking at enhancing this further, and what we'd like to do is actually have it so where if you, let's say, exceed the character limit for that field, the original field on the form is then changed to say see continuation sheet, and all of the notes is then put onto a continuation sheet, so it's all kept together, so it's all continuous and all sort of there. But that, like I said, is something we'd like to do later down the line. In terms of actually filling in the form, like I said, very much the same in terms of the information we're asking for. We have made some changes here, so if I jump into the main switch, where we've got the device type, I can type in and I can type ahead now. So let's say I wanted to put a 60947-3. I could just type that in, and then that will narrow my results down. So as I start typing, it will start clearing anything that doesn't match what I'm typing, making it easier to select information. And that will be a case for any of the drop-down fields. You can start typing ahead. The only thing you need to do to get that working is just double-click in the field, and then you can start typing. I'll abandon those changes. And then the main thing we have changed is the circuit details test results area. So unlike on the previous system where you'd have a distribution board already created and then you just add your circuits, this time around we get to the page, we want to click anywhere on the page, and what will be pulled up is a distribution board listing. So this is going to be an area where, let's say we had multiple distribution boards at the same, or on a form. I can see them all at once at a glance. I can see which ones I've got created and the ordering that they're in. To add a new distribution board, simply click Add To. That's then going to add the DB, and then I can start either adding circuits straight away, or I can fill in the DB details first. In this case, I'll add the distribution board details, and I'm just going to put some information in here. I'll sign, and then I'll also add my test instrument, and that information's there. Then if I scroll back up to the top, to add a circuit is simply a case of just clicking Add New. That will then pull out a menu, and this will be a very familiar menu if you've used the previous system before, in terms of, that menu that would pop up to enter the circuit details and test results. So I'll put some information in here. And then what we can do is we still have retained the option to create multiple circuits at once. So if I go down here, I can click 18 circuits. When I return to DB, you can see those 18 circuits are then created. So that's filled in. We still have retained the same options as before to set all blank to NA. So if I click here, that will automatically put NA in all of the relevant fields. And we have also retained the ability to drag and drop information, so you can drag down columns. So if I change that reference from F to G, drag it down, you can see that's all changed there. Same with the descriptions. If I change that to test in lowercase, drag down, that'll copy. And again, same with the circuit numbering. So that will renumber automatically. You can also drag and drop circuits. So let's say you needed to reorder them. You've added them, you realized, oh, I've missed a circuit, I need to put that back in, halfway up the distribution board. On the old system, you'd have to click on the circuit and keep pressing, the up and down arrow to reposition it as needed. Now we've made that a lot easier. You can now just drag and drop. So I can literally, as you can see, drag the circuit and just drop it in the order I want. If I then, let's say, wanted to renumber that afterwards, I can just change the first circuit, drag it down, and then that will correct the numbering pattern. And again, this works with three-phase circuits as well. So if you've got, let's say, a numbering pattern like 1L1, you can drag that down. You can see there it will pick up that numbering pattern for the three-phase individual circuits, and you can do it with three-phase triple pole circuits as well. You can still edit things, and again, that type ahead feature we have is still retained, so you can still edit information by typing into fields. You can still drag down. We have also added some options for bulk activities, so either I can individually select a number of circuits at a time and choose bulk, and I can clear, duplicate, or delete. Alternatively, I can select all, and then again I can do the same: bulk, clear, duplicate, and delete. So if I duplicate, you'll see that information is copied, and then I can still individually clear, delete, or duplicate by clicking on the three dots on the right hand side. And if we click yes, that will be removed. Just copy that down so we can see now I've got 35 circuits. And when I return to DB listing, you can see that distribution board's there, so DB1's there. If I then wanted to add another distribution board, it would simply be a case of clicking Add New. And what I'll show actually, before we go back to the form itself, if I click Add New again, you can use any distribution board templates and circuit templates you've got saved. So to use the DB template, it's simply a case of clicking Add New, choose DB. You've then got the option to copy a DB that's already on the form if you wanted to duplicate the previous one, make changes to it for the copy, or you can use DB templates. And you can see there I've got an example template. Click yes. I'll change that to DB2. And then you can see there, those circuits have also copied across on the distribution board template. And again, you can do the same thing with circuits. So if we click Add New for a circuit, we can choose circuit, copy a previous one, or we can use a circuit template that we've got saved. So I'll pick upstairs sockets. I'll change that circuit to 4. And then we can return to DB, and you'll see that's copied as well. I'll just go down here, I'll sign the page. And if the distribution board isn't connected to the origin, you can reference that here. So there is a little toggle on the right-hand side. You can tick that, and then you can manually reference here where the distribution board's supplied. Alternatively, there is an option to select a distribution board that's already on the form and then pick the circuit that's supplying it, and it will then also populate some of the fields below. As you can see there, that's returned to our listing, so that will show us that distribution board created. Another change we have made, which is a huge improvement compared to the old system. What you'd have to do, let's say you added your distribution boards, you're going around testing, you've added them in the order you've tested, however that isn't the layout that they go through. What you can do, rather than previously you'd have to template the distribution boards, then delete them, re-add them in the order you want, you can simply go to this listing here. We can reorder them like we did the circuits by just dragging them up and down. And then when we hit save and close, the certificate will re-render. And you can see there DB2 is now the first distribution board I've created. And if I go down here, you can see DB1 is then the second distribution board. Just like the previous system as well, if there is any continuation sheets, so you can see I've done 35 circuits, that has created automatically additional pages as needed. So you don't have to manually sort of tell it to create another sheet. One other thing we have changed is we have split the images and notes and private notes away from each other. So on the previous system, images and notes and private notes were in the same area. We did find that unfortunately some people would make a note, let's say that they wanted to be on the form. Instead, they've left it as a private note, so then it's not included on the PDF, and then they'd either have to duplicate the form to put the note they'd like on or provide that to the client separately. So what we've done to hopefully make that clearer and easier to sort of follow is notes at the top here. If we click on that, it will say, this section is for private notes. Anything on there won't be on the final form PDF. So if you wanted to make a note either for yourself to revisit later on the job, if it's a large job and perhaps you found something you need to go back and sort of explore further, you can do here. Or if you've got multiple colleagues, let's say working on a site, and you wanted to leave them a note for something they need to be aware or have a look into, you could do that here and it won't appear on the final PDF. And then to add a note on the final form or an image, if you wanted to show, let's say you're doing an EICR, you found some observations, you wanted to accompany that with an image, simply click on Add Continuation, and then you've got the option there to add images and notes, and you can then start adding your notes, any images that go with it. And we have also introduced the ability to add files now. So if you have, let's say, you're doing an installation, you're installing a piece of equipment, and there is, let's say, a technical manual or a document PDF that you've got that supports that piece of equipment, you can attach it to the form. When you download it electronically, that attachment will then be appended to the back of the form. So you've got that then for the client, so you could show that, and you can provide that to the client on one document rather than two separate documents. Moving along, if we go to check and complete, what we have also improved, if I click yes to check and complete, is our form validation. So on the previous system, again, where you press checking or complete before, it would then take you to the summary and problems page, and it would, let's say, highlight a list of issues of things you perhaps missed or things that perhaps aren't possible. You put two date ranges in that sort of conflict with each other, so it can't complete. Where on the old system it would show you that list, but it wouldn't allow you to actually jump to that section to actually take a look and say, okay, well, what's the problem? Where is it? What should I then be able to put in? You'd have to kind of work that out, which could be especially frustrating if you've got a large distribution board or lots of distribution boards, and maybe one of them's highlighted an error. It's like, which one? Where is that? The approach we've actually changed here is, so when we hit check and complete, we've got this panel that comes out on the right-hand side. It will check any validation or any fields that we've set up currently for validation. It will highlight any issues found. And also, if I click on the warning triangle, it will jump to that section. So then I can see exactly where the problem is, what section it is. I can correct that on the go. And I've got an error count down here at the bottom. So you can see I've got 22 errors. If I click on that, that's just gone to 21 as it saved this change. And then you can see all of the sections that have a problem. And if I just press next to the error count, it will jump to the next section that's missing. So I'll assign these two sections. I'm just going to put some information in to these fields to clear it. And then, yeah, most of my errors, unfortunately, signatures where I've just missed it. So it will highlight anything like that. Once any of the issues or all of the errors that it's picked up has been cleared, you'll see that error count at the button then, or at the bottom then changes to finalize. You can then click finalize, press yes, and then that will take you to the summary and problems page where you can then choose to have the form emailed, posted like before, but also set that reminder date. So again, like I was saying earlier, if it's a condition report you're working on and it's due to be retested in 3 years' time, you could put that reminder date in there, and then close to the time, you'd receive an alert. What I'll do is I'll finalize the form now. Once we finalize, you'll get that confirmation that it's been saved and that it's been successfully submitted. The serial number will then be populated onto the PDF. At this point, I can now either generate the download, so I can just download the PDF, give that to the client, or send that, or print it, however I'd like. I can notify, so I can carry on through from this form to the notification and notify building control, or I can go straight into a new form and start working on the next form, whether that's a minor works or the ICR. You can then just create the next one. I'll close that there. And in terms of the demo, that's the main bit of the demo. I'll hand back to Sam, and I think we'll go to a Q&A.
That's great. Thanks very much, Lewis. And you've answered a lot of the questions. Thanks also to the audience for putting some great questions into the chat. And we've got some time now. We'll go through some of those common and frequently asked ones. The first one is a lot of people asking about an offline version and an offline app. So just want to make it clear that that was one of the fundamental drivers for the new system, was that people wanted to be able to work offline. So this software enables you to work offline, but there are some things to consider. So Lewis, do you just want to talk people through what they need to do and what they need to consider when working in an offline situation?
Yeah, of course, no problem. So, yeah, what you said there exactly is right. So in terms of the offline functionality and having an app, the approach with this is to have a website version that can work offline, so you don't need an app to take offline. It will do it all. Like Sam said, there is some things that you need to do to sort of have that prepared and ready to go and get that working. So the main one would be under the menu, if we go down to Profile, just making sure that in the settings there, enable offline access is set to yes. That would be the main one, so that's enabled so it can work. What the system will then do is any forms that you work on, it will save them locally to your device. So it's going to use some of your device's memory to save that information. So to have a form ready for offline use, like I mentioned earlier, it's just a case of opening the form. You'll then get that green tick like we've got on the right-hand side in the clouds. The only then requirements really that you need is to leave the tab open. So if you are working offline, let's say, and you finish the form, you move on to the next form offline, that's absolutely fine. You can create multiple forms offline. There's no issue there. But when it comes to syncing the information back, if your connection's restored while you're working on the form that you're editing, you're editing it and the internet comes back up, it will sync automatically in the background for you. If, let's say, you're on site, you've done a couple forms, you're not going to have internet until you get back home or back to the office, what you need to do is leave this tab open. Don't close it, because it's saving everything in that tab, that session that you're logged in with. When you get back to the office, just reopen your laptop or reopen your browser and then open the forms up, and it will sync back onto the online system. But yeah, the main thing is just not closing the tab until you've connected back to the internet and reopened that form.
That's great, yeah, and that answers another one of the engineers' associated questions, where if you edit a form offline, will the changes be saved right away? well, they're held within that form until you've got internet access again when it can be synced. Is that fair enough to say?
Yeah, exactly that. And it's just about leaving the browser open, so it's got a place to store that information until it can be synced.
Okay. We'll jump around a bit because we'll take the questions in the order and the frequency that they came in. So a lot of people are asking about why don't we automatically fill in ZS values for RCBOs, maximum ZS values, and that's really because we're not sure, without knowing what your design is like, we're not sure whether you're using the RCD characteristic or the MCB characteristic, both methods of which are acceptable with regards to the design, and you might choose one for a particular installation reason. So we don't pre-populate the maximum ZS values on an RCD because you've got those two methods. So hopefully that clears that. A question for you, Lewis, that came in. Somebody who's said they're interested in reports. Is it possible to download an Excel file with all history of, for example, Part P submissions based on installation replacement of a consumer unit? So can they make it sort of query based? They want to know how many Part Ps they've done where there's been a consumer unit change.
Yeah, that's a great question, Sam, and actually it's an area I did miss, unfortunately, where you can do reporting on this system. So all of these fields where you have a listing most of them will give you the option to download a CSV report, and in some cases the PDF. So where we've got our list of forms here, for example, and I'll move to notifications afterwards, if we select all, that's going to select everything that I'm looking at on the page. I can then click on select all results, and that will pick everything that's in my listing that I've got. So let's say you did a search or an advanced search, you wanted to see perhaps EICRs that are satisfactory and are locked or unsatisfactory, let's say within the last 30 days. You could apply those filters, select all the results that come up, and then at the bottom we've got bulk. So then you can bulk download a CSV, and that will show you relevant information for those fields. So some of that will be like observation counts, the outcome, again, a number of observations for C1, C2s, the installation address. So that will pull a report. Or alternatively, you can bulk download PDFs. So if there's a lot of forms that you want to download in one go, you can do that. And again, it's a very similar concept if we move to the listings for notifications. So you can, again, select all, select individual notifications, and again, do the bulk. And you can advanced search. So unfortunately, there isn't a way to advanced search by a certain work descriptor. So you couldn't do it by, install a replacement consumer unit or one or more new circuits. But what you could do, let's say it was a time range you wanted to look at, you could filter by that time range, download the CSV. There will be a column for the work descriptors, and then you can filter it out that way in the spreadsheet. So you can sort it by that and then get a picture of, okay, how many new consumer units did we install, or how many one or more new circuits did we notify? And you can do it that way.
Good stuff. I think you did cover it, but perhaps we just need to show it again. A lot of people are asking about converting certificates into reports and vice versa, and also being able to duplicate certificates and reports. So can you just talk us through that one again?
Yeah, of course. So if we go back to our form listing here, there's a couple of ways you can get to the option to duplicate. Either you can manually expand the form in question, and that will then pull this down for you. Alternatively, on the right-hand side, we have got an actions button here. So if we click on there, we'll get the options of duplicate and convert. Like I said, convert depends on the kind of form. So if it's an EIC or EICR, generally you'll be able to convert between the two. So let's say in this case I've finished my installation certificate I was just working on. I click on convert. That's then going to show me a list of available forms I can convert to. At the moment, unfortunately, it is limited to the same brand of form. So if it was an approved contractor branded EIC, you could only convert to an approved contractor branded EICR, although we are hoping to expand that so you can actually convert between the brandings depending on what forms you have available going sort of forwards. So in this case, I'll pick the EICR, press create. That's then going to take all that information. Anything that's relevant between the two forms will then be converted into the EICR. And then if I move down to, let's say, like the circuit details test results, you'll see there my distribution boards are copied over. The circuit details, the test results are all there. And again, it's a similar concept when we can duplicate. So again, if I go back to my listing, we've got our EICR we've just created. Click on more actions, and then we've got duplicate. It will say, you sure you want to duplicate this form? Click yes, and then that's going to create another form. We'll get a confirmation there to say it's successfully duplicated, and then we've got another copy. So if you wanted, let's say you were doing multiple EICRs for a very similar property type, and you didn't want to have to rewrite everything from scratch, you could duplicate previous EICRs and save a bit of time that way.
Yeah. Okay. Another question that we've heard before. So have we introduced the ability to edit a certificate after it's been locked to, for example, change an address? No is the short answer, and it's really because we can't. Once that certificate is locked, then effectively it could be published, so other people will have the ability to have a copy of that certificate. So we can't allow it, therefore, to be changed. So we appreciate it is one of those things that, human error often happens, and people make a small mistake. So, but once it's locked, that's it. But as Lewis has just demonstrated, it's very easy to duplicate, so you can therefore make a duplicate and then make the required revisions to that duplicate. But yeah, I can't see a time or a reason why we're ever going to allow people to unlock a certificate and make changes. Would you add anything to that, Lewis?
No, exactly what you said there. I couldn't have explained it any better. At this point in time, I couldn't see where we would make that change, but yeah, exactly what you said.
Yeah. We've got one member tonight. It said, we've not been migrated as yet. When might we be expected to take place? Now, I know that's not technical, but I think it might be worth saying just in case there are others in the audience.
Yeah, exactly that. And so we are moving customers in waves. So some customers have already moved over, and some, like you said there, haven't moved just yet. We haven't got exact dates of when the next wave will be taking place at the moment, but when it is your time to be moved across, you will get an email or a couple of emails beforehand to let you know, this is the date that you're moving across, and then a closer one to the time as a reminder to say, just to let you know, you are still moving across on this date. And then on the day of migration, yeah, you'll also, when you log into the system, it's going to prompt you and it will tell you you're currently being migrated. And then you'll get an email subsequently afterwards as well to say you have been successfully migrated, and then you can start using the new system.
Yep. And it's certainly worth, do have a look in your email inbox and your junk mail box, because you may have received an email telling you. We have had a few people that have got caught in that trap. So yeah, if you have been made ready, we will have we'll have warned you quite a few times in advance of the actual date. But yeah, please do have a look in your email inbox. Another question which I think we did cover nicely was how to rearrange circuit schedules, in that we've got some great features now, and it really is a drag and drop function. So hopefully that the engineer that asked that will have seen it on tonight's demo, asked the question before it was demoed, but if not, can go back and look at it on demand to see how easy that is. We've had a few questions around sort of intelligence of the system. So if I pick on one of them was, does the web software now identify failed measured values to those of maximum permitted with regards to maximum ZS? I don't believe it does, but you might correct me if it does. That's a great feature which we might look to provide enhancements to in the future. So if your measured ZS value that you record is greater than the maximum permitted ZS for the protective device, then it would be great to flag it. Is that something that you've been asked before, Lewis?
Admittedly, it's not something we've been asked before, but I do see where it would be very handy to have in case, to sort of prompt the users, are you sure is this correct, just in case? So yeah, it's definitely something we can have a look at down the line and see how we can incorporate it. I know we are looking at the validation that we currently have and seeing how that can be improved further to highlight potential areas missed, or like you're saying, or like our sort of commenter was saying there, where perhaps the value is too high, and maybe prompts a warning to confirm, are you sure? So yeah, definitely something we can have a look at.
Yeah. And a couple of related questions. So someone said, how can I paste multiple lines, for example, from an Excel spreadsheet into the circuit form? And a similar related question, let me just get the right one. It was 50, is yeah, how can we copy text from another certificate? So we're not now talking about whole certificates or whole circuits, but we might just want to pull one bit of text either from another certificate or from an external source like Excel. What can we do for that?
So a couple things there. So in terms of copying from an Excel spreadsheet, sort of the whole, sort of all of the columns for circuits, unfortunately this isn't something that's possible, because you need to go through the process of adding a circuit, and it's got those columns there to validate correct items. So let's say, like, type of device, or type of wiring reference method, where it's only got certain options. So that's why you'd need to sort of go through that process, so it knows, okay, A is A, where you could mistype, let's say, and put Z, and it's not something that's applicable in there. So it goes through that validation upon creation. But copying actual text, so let's say you had a spreadsheet, you wanted to copy bits of text out of a field, that's more than possible. So you can copy and paste, like you saw within a form where I was copying and pasting this is an example text. You can do that in circuit. So let's say the circuit description, you could paste that in. Alternatively, you could use circuit templates. So let's say you had a form and the lighting circuit was sort of coming up again and again. You could have their lights or sockets like I had on that example form, and you could use a template to save some time doing it that way, or you could just copy and paste sort of from like a text document.
Yeah. A question that I guess we all, is there a way to undo if you accidentally delete a circuit, delete a DB?
Unfortunately, there isn't at the moment, although again, it is a great idea to have an undo. I would be honest, I have deleted things by mistake, circuits and distribution boards, and I've had to either re-add it again, or if I've used a template, copy that template again. So yeah, it's definitely a great idea. I think it's definitely on the list of things to have a look at to incorporate, but at the moment there isn't, unfortunately, an undo action.
Okay. And an engineer's asked, how do you change the logo that appears, because they seem to have their old version has appeared. So how do they change their company logo?
Yeah, so the way to do that is there's two ways. The permanent way to change it would be if we go to the menu and then we go down to company information. We've got logos there. We can pull up our list of logos that we've got on the account, and then you can upload a new logo onto there if you haven't already got it on there. And on the right hand side, you can see the NICEIC logo here. We have a little pin icon. If you click that pin, that will set your logo as the default. So then any forms you create that are NICEIC branded, so the domestic installer or approved contractor forms will automatically use that logo. Let's say you had a specific form you wanted to use a different logo, so perhaps you had a specific one you use for certain jobs or certain clients. If we open up our EICR that we created earlier, we can either click on our existing logo here, and then that will pull up our logo library, and we can then again pick from our list of logos that we've got. Or alternatively, let's say there was no logo in this case, we can expand the right hand pane, and then there's logos here as an option, and then again that will pull up the logo area where we can pick from the library, or we can go into the logo library and we can create new. So we could add just a new logo on the fly as we're filling in a form and set it as a default here, or you can manage it in its own separate area. So yeah, a couple of ways you could do it.
And someone's asked, can we demonstrate the entry of an observation on an EICR?
Yeah, of course. So A couple of ways to add an observation. So if it's a manual observation on the form, we'd go to part 2, or page 2, sorry, part 5. We click in there, it's then going to show us any observations we've already marked on the schedule of items inspected. But to add a manual observation, simply a case of clicking add new. You can then put in some details. The outcome, you can add an image as well. So let's say there was a certain C1 or C2, you wanted an image to accompany that specific observation. You could add an image there. And then when you save and close, you can see that observation's then captured. If we hit save, we look at the PDF, that will then be populated. So test, C1, the location and the item number. And then let's say we're still filling in forms. So we're still filling in then the following pages of part 9. If we capture a C1 here, I'll put in test 2 and save again. If we jump back to page 2, you'll see there the observation that's from the schedule will go to the top of the list, and then any manual observations will just keep moving down, so they'll fall below the schedule of items inspected observations. But that's all you would do.
Great, good stuff. A lot of people asking, how does it work on a tablet or a phone, and whether Rumit from the team used a great phrase, which was a learning. Every day's a learning day for me. This is the software's being developed as a progressive web app, which means it's the same software which is capable of running on many platforms. So, tell us a little bit about that, Lewis.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said there, it's a progressive web app is how the system has been built. It's fully optimized for mobile phones and tablets. Of course, the experience does change slightly. So certain listings, like we've got our form listing here as a great example, we've got quite a lot of columns. If we were to jump over to, let's say, a tablet or a mobile phone, some of these columns disappear to make it sort of use more seamless experience for a smaller screen where it simply can't fit that much information in one go. But it has been optimized so you can fill in a form on a tablet, on a phone, if you did want to. Okay.
And lastly, because we're running out of time, which is great, because we've had some great questions in tonight. Can you show people how to make a template for a circuit?
Yeah, of course. So I'll go back into the EOSCR. And great question. There's actually a couple of different template types you can make, and where you go will vary slightly depending on what you want to make. So if you wanted to make a template of a whole form like this, for example, you'll have the option at the bottom, a button, template options, and then you can save, a new template with just the form or just the form. Alternatively, you can then make a template where it's the form, distribution boards and circuits as a whole. So that's one way if you wanted to copy everything over onto a template to then later on use. Alternatively, for individual circuits or distribution boards, if we click on the schedule of items inspected, we'll pull up the distribution board, let's say in question. To save the board as a template, you just simply want to click on Save to DB Library. As you saw before with my list that I had, so if we save new, we'll give it a name, and then that will be available in the list. So when I add a DB, I can choose a distribution board, and that template will then appear. Same thing with circuits. So let's say downstairs sockets, I wanted to save. Again, click on the pencil, save to circuits library. I can either overwrite, save as new. So again, I'll do that. Give it a name, and then that's saved. So then if I wanted to use that later on, I can simply click add new for a circuit, choose circuit, choose templates, and then upstairs sockets or downstairs sockets is there. And then when we click yes, that'll populate the information, and we can then add that circuit.
Great stuff. Okay, we've run out of time, which is good, because we've really had a full input tonight. Some great questions in the chat, and hopefully we've been able to answer as many as we can. Must say thank you to our colleagues Carrie and Juliet and Rumit in the background who've been beavering away answering questions as well. And thank you to all the audience for actually contributing tonight and putting those questions in. We've had some great questions, some of which are ideas for future as well. So thank you very much. Remember, you are always able to re-watch this on demand using the same link as you used to join tonight. And as Lewis reminded me, there's a previous version that we did of this on the NIC YouTube channel, which you can also watch on demand. The demo will be very similar, but the Q&A will probably be very different. So I can't remember the questions exactly, but it'll be worth looking for those. And also on the system itself, there are a whole bunch of how-to videos, which will really help you, and it will benefit if you've got a bit of time, which you can use and log as CPD. It'd be great to do that, so that you're not leaving it till the last minute when you've got a certificate to do on Friday afternoon and 3 o'clock is the first time you open a new system. So get as much pre-prepared as you possibly can. But thank you very much tonight. Especially big thanks to you, Lewis. Thanks very much. Any final words from you?
No, just thank you very much for having me. And yeah, a massive point there around the previous recording. On the YouTube channel, we've also got some helpful sort of bite-sized videos that you can find. There is a link on the website, but it's also on YouTube. So yeah, very good. If you just want to see specific sections, you can have a look there.
Thanks very much, and apologies that we've overrun a little bit. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Cheers. Bye-bye.